Awesome. Welcome to the Interfaith Power and Light Summer Solstice webinar, Solar Financing for Congregations. As you join, introduce yourself to all panelists and attendees by dropping in your name, congregation, and location in the chat. My name is Sarah Paulos, IPL's Program Director. First, I want to recognize that I live on the ancestral lands of 7 different Native peoples. I acknowledge their ongoing presence and their stewardship of these lands. I invite you to place in the chat the name of the people whose land you rely on now. As you have questions, please add them to the Q&A feature. If you're not familiar with the Q&A feature, you will see a button on the lower part of the screen that says Q&A. A recording of this conversation will be emailed to all registrants and also posted to IPL's YouTube. And those of you who are just joining, welcome to Interfaith Power and Light Summer Solstice webinar, Solar Financing for Congregations. As you join, introduce yourself to all panelists and attendees by dropping in your name, congregation, and location in the chat. And if you have questions throughout the presentation today, please add them to the Q&A feature. If you're not familiar with the Q&A feature, you'll see a button on the lower part of the screen that says Q&A. A recording of this conversation will be emailed to all registrants and posted to IPL's YouTube page. Interfaith Power and Light inspires and mobilizes people of faith and conscience to take bold and just action on climate change. We are a national network with affiliates in 40 states. Today's webinar partners are United Women in Faith, United Church of Christ, and Creation Justice Ministries. So with the passage of the historic climate legislation that offers nonprofits a discount on renewable energy investments, many more congregations are considering solar. It's important to acknowledge that faith communities have different capacities to carry debt or costs for upfront expenses. Congregations in frontline communities often guide their communities through the storms of the climate crisis. We need to work together to ensure that these communities have access to clean energy through the new provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act. That is one way we help our communities become more resilient in the face of climate impacts. So first up today on today's Solar Financing for Congregations webinar, we'll learn more about the different ways that congregations can finance solar from Jerry Bernstein, longtime IPL volunteer helping congregations assess themselves for solar. And also he's the author of IPL's Solar Financing for Congregations Guide. Prior to this, he spent 10 years in the California Community College system, establishing solar PV installer courses statewide, including teaching solar financing. And before that, Jerry had a lifetime career with Stanford Research Institute, developing new products in the transportation and energy industries. Then we'll take a deeper look at one of the options that allow a congregation to install solar with no upfront costs, called power purchase agreements. Andreas Karelas, Executive Director of RE-volv, will explain how these agreements benefit a congregation and why they are still a good idea, even with the new government support for nonprofits such as congregations to go solar. Andreas will also share the new guidance on securing the bonuses in the Inflation Reduction Act for nonprofits going solar. He is a dedicated renewable energy advocate with over 15 years of environmental and renewable energy nonprofit experience. Prior to founding RE-volv, Andreas worked with a number of leading organizations, including the American Council on Renewable Energy and the National Audubon Society. RE-volv is a climate justice nonprofit that helps nonprofits in underserved communities across the country go solar, while raising awareness about equitable climate solutions and training the next generation of clean energy leaders. They work with all congregations. Finally, we'll hear from Pastor Current at Hope United Methodist Church, an IPL solar congregation who successfully worked with RE-volv to get solar on their roof. Reverend Current is the pastor of Hope United Methodist Church in South San Francisco. In recent years, they installed a solar power and battery power storage system to provide the surrounding community clean energy during times of grid failure, blackouts, and emergencies. Reverend Current is a graduate of several advanced degree programs, including a Master of Divinity degree from Pacific School of Religion in Berkeley, California, He is presently enrolled in the Sustainability and Behavioral Change program at the University of California, San Diego, and is engaged in ongoing postgraduate study in environmental justice and resistance theology at Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C. What better way to celebrate the summer solstice than to be inspired by a congregation that's using the energy of the sun to care for their community? I'll turn it over to you now, Jerry.
Thank you, Sarah. And good morning. I'm going to try to keep myself on time here and setting a timer. I think the slides will be coming up here. I've been with IPL as a volunteer for 7 years. I've been working with congregations nationwide across all faith traditions to sort of look at solar prospects and nature of the support. I'll get into. This becomes a timely update as there are enough changes that we probably should be looking at rewriting the guide because of these changes. Next page, please. So solar is not just a matter of opportunities in the larger states or the more favorable states. There are about almost 1,400 PV systems nationwide, and really in 48 states, the District of Columbia, pretty widespread. And again, not just in the large states, as I said. Yes, California is the largest, has the largest number of congregations, but Massachusetts, Washington, D.C., Indiana, Wisconsin, North Carolina, we get a geographic, so there's size distribution amongst the states, and there's a lot of geographic distribution also. And if you look at the per capita list, rather than just the raw number of systems, if you adjust it for population, we see, Vermont, Delaware, Hawaii. So solar is really a function of more than just state size and state policy. It's also been a matter of commitment to the congregations in those locations, certainly building on what the states allow, and as we'll be getting into in this presentation, now the ways in which the federal government is going to support and incentivize the solar by congregations. Next slide, please. This is the way it used to be. Acquiring a PV system is not synonymous with fundraising. I'm going to hope that most of you on this call have become aware of that already, that there are alternatives to the financial side, which is what I'm addressing in this presentation, which is more than just a fundraising opportunity. Sure, you can utilize fundraising, and this is the way it used to be, because the next slide, no, I'm not there yet, so don't change the slides. This is up to last fall, or up to almost the present. You could purchase a system, you could fundraise for it, maybe use some funds from endowment, maybe get a loan from one of the affiliated organizations. You could lease 6, 10, or 20 years. You could prepay lease and you'd get a discount. And in some cases, congregants formed their own LLC to own a system. And then the third way was a power purchase agreement, which was a 20-year, typically sometimes shorter, way of just paying per kilowatt hour rather than renting the system, which is what a lease in effect does. This is the way things were. You could purchase, you could lease, you could do a power purchase agreement. But this is now changed. Ashiki, next slide, please. The purchase you could still do, but now with the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a possibility of a 30% up to 60%, I'll be getting into this, rebate. So yes, you can still fundraise, endowment, borrow, but you can also get rebates as nonprofits. I'm sure most of you become aware that nonprofits are eligible for cash rebates because you're not getting tax credits, you're going to get a rebate, and I'll be getting into that in a bit here. Lease, I honestly can't say what's happening with a traditional lease. I've talked to 1 or 2 firms that we've worked with that have supported congregations in the past, and they've stopped doing their standard leases. Another firm that we have worked with for well over 5 years, that has been one of our go-to firms for larger systems, they haven't returned calls to me, they haven't returned calls to some of the congregations that I've referred to them. So I, quite frankly, at this point, do not know what is happening in the lease scene because of the tax law changes. So again, the Inflation Reduction Act, while it is opening up the rebate opportunity for churches, this appears to be changing the economics for the leasing companies. So I'm not sure what's happening in that regard. Power purchase agreements appear to be still offered. And that again is where you have a long-term contract, you're paying per kilowatt hour, but you're paying at a rate less than your local utility would charge. And I think there's a distinction between the for-profit power purchase agreement firms that are out there and nonprofits such as RE-volv. So I'm going to count on Andreas in the subsequent presentation to delve into what the Inflation Reduction Act has done and the opportunities it's created in the power purchase agreement space. Next slide, please. So what about the rebates? That's no doubt something you've heard about. The details still to be announced. Well, that was when I first prepared this slide. Just last Wednesday, there was a partial release. There's a release of some information on this. 30% rebate is a cash rebate to nonprofits who put in a solar PV system from this year for the next 10 years forward. It's a form to get this rebate. You'll add a form to your annual tax filing, which is probably a Form 990. The rebate is likely to be received 6 to 12 months after your filing. So if you put a system in this year, you would file taxes, sometime after January of 2024, and you would get the rebate perhaps 6 months after that. So there is a lag time in there. And in some cases, I've still got to clarify this, the rebates are subject to installers paying prevailing wages and having apprentices. Whether this applies to larger systems or all systems, I've seen conflicting information on that. So that has to be nailed down. There's the basic 30% rebate, but as I will be getting into here in a moment, there are 3 additional adders, which is kind of redundant, but this is the way they come out. There's a 10% addition. In other words, you can get 30% plus another 10% for domestic content. And this may include Canadian, Mexican supply sources. There aren't a lot of domestic suppliers here yet. There's a 10% low income and tribal community adder. If you're in certain designated by census tract low income communities and or in a tribal community, there's another 10% that you would get as part of your rebate. And then there's an energy community adder. For if the presence of the facility is in a designated area that's been impacted by coal mine closures, refinery closures, pipeline changes, there's a possibility of 10%. So next slide, please. So again, coming back to these point by point, this is the, you'll see at the bottom, whitehouse.gov, all these references that I've got in here, Sarah has, and they'll be available. They're on the slides. So if you get a copy of the slides, or Sarah will be making them available, I think, subsequent to the presentation. So all these sources will be available to you. You don't need to write them down right now. They'll be provided to you afterward. So this is the whitehouse.gov timeline for the rebate process. And this shows that the second point here is probably the key one, that if you install the system, you've got to pre-register with the IRS. So this is not just something that's going to happen at tax time. You've got to pre-register the fact and get a code number or something that says you've got this system, and that that will let you proceed from there. So that's going to be a step that you'll just have to anticipate taking before you file your taxes. Next slide, please. As I said, the tax credits, this is going to be hard to read, but again, you've got the, I'm saying at the bottom, if you Google the term federal solar tax credit for business, there'll be a number of sites that come up that are commercial sites, but look for the one that's energy.gov, the energy efficiency, renewable energy website. And if you look at the first all blue column, that's the 2023 to 2033 base credit of 30%. As I said, then there are these adders. There's something called a production tax credit. That's the orange part. That's generally not of interest for smaller size systems. That's where you would get a rebate per kilowatt hour for your system. In this case, for most congregations, I would say virtually all, the the tax credit is the way to go for these size systems, and that's going to be summarized in this table with the adders shown. Next slide, please. The energy communities are being identified. Again, you can look up US DOE Energy Community Map to see if you're in one of the energy communities. Just as a quick one, you'll see the orange areas tend to be coal related. The blue ones tend to be near fossil fuel. So if you see yourself in an orange or blue area on this map, check it out. You may say, what's San Francisco got to do with this? We have oil, that's probably the East Bay. So that's oil refineries. You don't have to be a coal community to be eligible for these extra points here. So next slide, please. And what all this means is the major change in the financing landscape. It's going to lower your PV system costs 30%. So if you were borderline previously, you're probably looking at very attractive at this moment. The payback periods will shorten. Where previously it was available in the high cost states like Hawaii, California, New England. I guess a lot of other states now are going to find PV systems far more attractive. Next slide, please. And loans are available from a variety. Most of you probably know who your affiliated source would be, but there's a number of organizations that will loan within denominational categories. And the last slide, please, Ashki. Next slide, yeah. And just quick, okay, just a couple of quick observations. If you're thinking about this as an individual, please get some people to work with you. This is more than a one-person project at a congregation. This is not about fundraising. You can make this pay based on your savings. There's a suggestion in here if you want to know, gee, is this installer good or not? I've got suggestions to try Energy Sage to check them out. And a final thought, just based on my years of experience of working with congregations in this, get multiple bids. You may find somebody you like, but you really owe it to yourself in congregations. To fellow congregants, I never cease to be amazed at how much variety there is in different bids from installers. So don't settle for one, even though you really like the people. Get multiple bids. You owe it to yourself and your fellow congregants. And with that, I thank you, and we'll turn it back to Sarah.
Great. Thank you so much, Jerry. Really appreciate that. And just want to remind everybody to put your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. And also that the recording to this will be shared through a follow-up email afterwards, which will include slides. It'll include all the links that we're talking about today. And now I'd like to turn it over to Andreas from RE-volv. Andreas, take it away.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, everybody, for joining. Super excited to be here. Wow, there's 526 participants. That's incredible. I'm so thrilled to see so many people interested in learning more about solar and how they can help their congregation go solar and how we can help transition our communities to clean energy as quickly as possible. Because as we all know, that's the time that we're in, that this is the most pressing challenge of our time. And it's so important that communities of faith are stepping up and demonstrating their commitment. So we're super excited to be here and to see all of the IPL members and folks that have joined. So thank you all for having me. My name is Andreas Karelas. I'm the founder and executive director of RE-volv. We're a nonprofit organization based in San Francisco, although we work nationally to help congregations and nonprofits go solar. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we're a climate justice organization, and what we do is we provide solar financing to nonprofits like ourselves, because as we know, nonprofits historically have had a traditionally challenging time getting financing for their projects, as opposed to other types, residential or commercial projects. And in doing so, we help nonprofits go solar, not only to help them reduce their electricity bills, but also to help raise awareness in the community. How can we use the nonprofit organizations' solar system to demonstrate that this is possible and that clean energy is accessible in their area? So as I mentioned, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're based in San Francisco, and we incorporated in 2011 and have been working in the space for some time now. Next slide. We're really proud of a recent grant that we received with our partners, Interfaith Power and Light and Green the Church. And this grant was from the Department of Energy, and it was a part of what's called the Solar Energy Innovation Network, which is focused on how do you increase equitable access to solar in communities around the country where solar is currently not as common. And so the three partners, RE-volv, IPL, and Green the Church, put together a proposal to run a campaign to help solarize BIPOC-led houses of worship, Black, Indigenous, and people of color-led congregations. And we were very successful with that campaign. It was, we just finished that grant period, and it was about 1.5 years working together. And so we're super excited to continue to work with IPL and all the congregations here today. Next. So there's 3 pillars of RE-volv's model. And again, we're a nonprofit organization ourselves. We're not a traditional solar financer or lender. So there's actually more to our model than just the financing piece. So we like to think of our 3 pillars as empower, invest, and educate. Next slide. So we really focus on the empowerment piece. What does this mean? I'm sure everyone on this call has had that conversation about how big and scary climate change is. And when we look at how big and scary this problem is, we often, as individuals, feel disempowered. We feel like maybe there's not much that we can do. And so that's really where the community engagement comes in to play. It's at the community level that we can really come together and make real change. And so our empowerment work is focused primarily with college-age youth. So for those of you that work with college-age youth, this is a great opportunity to know about. We run a Solar Ambassador Fellowship where we train college students around the country to go into their community and help identify local congregations or nonprofits that want to go solar. And then throughout that year, they're helping that congregation or nonprofit along their solar journey. And many of our graduates from our ambassador program have gone on to work in the solar industry and other clean energy justice work. So we're very proud of that. Next slide. Oh, yep, next slide. So the next piece of our model is the investment piece. And this is a lot of what Jerry was just explaining. So we actually offer all 3 of these different financing products: a solar lease, a solar power purchase agreement, and a solar loan. Although the little caveat is that the loan is, we're working on it right now, and it's not yet out in the world, but we are almost done sort of finalizing that, and that'll be available in the next few weeks to month. But so far, the projects that we have financed have all been using a solar lease or a power purchase agreement. And oftentimes that's based on geography. Some states will allow a solar lease and not a PPA. Some states will allow a PPA and not a lease. And so depending on that, we'll work with you and your congregation to help figure out what's the best solar financing option available for you. Next slide. And the third pillar of our work, which is arguably the most important, is the community engagement. One of the things that we know is that it's not enough to just put solar on your roof. The next and most important step is really how are you using that to raise awareness about solar in your community. And so what we do in order to help that is we host events with you, including a ribbon cutting event, solar education events, where we're trying to tell the story of this project. So we're making a video, we're posting photos to social media, we're writing press releases and trying to get your congregation solar project in the news so that your community knows not only that you're going solar and demonstrating your commitment to clean energy, but that they can also go solar or get EVs or do energy efficiency at home. This is really the idea, is that we're planting a seed in each community for solar and clean energy adoption. Next slide. And so this is really our theory of change is based on this concept that has been known in the industry for some time. This is quoted from a report that came out of Tufts a few years ago, and it talks about the seeding effect of solar. And it's this idea that when each person goes solar, they're influencing their neighbors to go solar. In fact, we actually heard some data recently. This is unpublished data, but it's coming out soon, that when every person who installs solar will actually influence, and there will be an additional 100 solar installations in their neighborhood within the next 5 years. So if you think about that leverage, it's massive. And so our theory of change is, well, if we're putting solar up on the congregation and all of the families that the congregation interacts with, think about how many more people are going to adopt solar as a result. So it's not just about your congregation, it's also about that ripple effect or that seeding effect in the community. Next slide. So here's a bit about our solar financing tools. And I'll just mention this as well. I'll mention this later as well, but RE-volv is here to be a guide and a support for you and your congregation. If you end up finding out about solar from us and we can help you walk through this process, if you end up not going solar with us or purchasing it on your own, that's fine. And we're here to help. That's our goal, is really to help see you go solar. And if you do need solar financing, here's how we can help you achieve your goal. So whether that's through the lease or the PPA or soon to be the loan product, RE-volv would provide all of the upfront capital for the project. So there would be no upfront costs to the congregation. As I mentioned, that's either going to be through a lease, PPA, or loan, and that's often going to be dependent on geography. And we'd be able to talk with you about that and what works best for you. In everywhere in the country, we're going to be able to save you at least 15% or more on your electricity bills, oftentimes much more. And that rate that we're putting into our agreement is for 20 years. So you and your congregation are actually going to know exactly what the price of your electricity is going to be for the next 20 years, as opposed to being exposed to the volatility of utility rates as they rise over time. We also cover all the operations and maintenance of your system so that you and your maintenance staff don't have to worry about getting on the roof or cleaning it. We're going to be the ones to take care of that. And of course, when inverters need to be replaced, or if any other equipment needs a fine tuning, RE-volv would cover the cost of that. At the end of the lease or PPA, we basically donate the system to the nonprofit. So if the simple version of this is, it doesn't cost anything to get solar on your roof. You're saving 15% or more on your electricity bills for the next 20 years. And at the end, you get to keep the system for free. Next slide. So here's a little bit of the overview of how the process works. So the first step, which is very important, is we would need to collect 12 months of electricity bills from your congregation. There are a few ways to do this, but this is important because it allows us to figure out how big a solar system do you need, and make sure that we're appropriately sizing that system. The next, as Jerry mentioned, the importance of finding different installers and getting a few different bids. RE-volv will actually reach out to a number of installers in your area and handle that process, where we'll look at least 3 installers and find the best quote, find the best installer that can provide the best system for you at the lowest cost. We'll then put that financing proposal together and present it to you, you and your leadership. That might take however long it takes. Some congregations, it's very quick if they're motivated. In some cases, it takes a little bit longer if we're working with the parish council or the congregation members. And of course, RE-volv is here to help foster those conversations and walk through that journey with you. Once we sign a contract, the solar installation will happen pretty quickly afterwards. And once the installation starts, it's usually done in just a few days. And then you get to keep enjoying savings. from now and for many, many years to come. Next slide. So our impact to date, a little bit about RE-volv. We've helped nonprofits across the country go solar. And in doing so, we've deployed $11 million worth of solar projects, which has amounted to 4 megawatts of solar projects for nonprofits and congregations. It's 100,000 tons of CO2 have been avoided as a result of these congregations and nonprofits' decisions to go solar. And through that process, there are 70,000 people who benefit from the services of those organizations that are now able to have even more benefits because of the savings that they're receiving. So 65 nonprofits in 17 states have gone solar with RE-volv. So we have a lot of experience and we've navigated many different challenges along the way. And thankfully, we're able to bring that to helping you all go solar. This is arguably my biggest, my most favorite statistic is that the 65 nonprofits that we've helped go solar are now saving over $20 million in electricity bills that they can put back into their community, put back into their ministries, into their community service programs, and whatever it is that they do, because that's the benefit of solar. It's not just about doing good for the environment, it's also saving you money so that you can do more for the people that you work with. And as I mentioned, we have over 400 solar ambassadors that have gone through our program through 30 universities. And as I mentioned, if any of you work with college-age youth, this is a great time. We're actually recruiting now over the summer for the fall for new solar ambassador teams. So we'd love to discuss that with you. Next slide. Of the 65 nonprofits that we've served, 23 have been faith-based organizations. This is the most of any of the different areas of nonprofits that we've worked in. You can see in this slide here, we work with nonprofits of all kinds, affordable housing, veterans, youth, but faith is the most. It's over a third of our projects have been with faith communities. So this is to say that this is an area that we feel very passionately about, working with faith communities, and we're looking forward to using the lessons that we've learned to help you and your congregation go solar. Next. So what makes serving houses of worship unique? Again, we've worked with many different nonprofits, but we find that working with houses of worship has a slightly a different motivation and sometimes different challenges. And so we're well versed in these. Next. So the unique motivations, as I'm sure you all can speak to more so than I can, is largely a matter of stewardship. There's an ethical and a moral duty that the folks from the faith community we work with bring to this work. Obviously, electricity bill savings, we all can be benefiting from lower electricity bills. And of course, demonstrating that commitment to sustainability to the parishioners and to the larger community. Next slide. Of course, there are also common barriers that we've experienced and that we're prepared to help with. So one is different congregations have a different level of solar awareness or readiness. Some have, I'm sure many of the folks on here, I can see from the Q&A that people are asking really, in-depth questions, right? So some of you are maybe further along on this journey. No matter where you are on the journey, we'll be able to help you navigate to the next stage. There's also many stakeholders and decision makers. There can be the council members, there can be the pastors, there can be the congregation members themselves. So oftentimes a lot of voices need to be brought into the room in order to make a decision. And that's something that RE-volv has a lot of experience working with. And we'd be excited to walk that journey with you. Of course, a lot of congregations also have other priorities, right? Yes, solar is great, but what about the kitchen renovation that's been long overdue? Or what about this community program that's been underserved? That's been our focus. Well, one of the things that we like to point out is that, RE-volv is going to really make this very easy for you. We're going to do all the legwork so that you and your congregation and your parish council don't have to get into the weeds. And B is that once you're saving thousands of dollars on your electricity bills, you can put that back into whatever those other projects are, right? And help achieve those goals at the same time. Next slide. So now I'm just going to quickly run through a few examples and show some pictures just so that you can see the type of projects that we've worked with. So this is Faith Baptist Church in East Oakland. Faith Baptist is an incredible organization that serves as a food distribution service center for a local food bank. They give out over 100 tons of food every year to members of the East Oakland community that face food insecurity. And so thanks to a solar system with RE-volv, they're going to save $50,000 on their electricity bills that they can put back into providing more food for their community. I'll also add that this project, after it went solar with RE-volv, partnered with IPL, and IPL allowed it to add storage to the system, and it's now been deemed the first resiliency hub in Oakland. And it got a news story on the evening news, which we were super proud of. Next slide. And this is the ribbon cutting from Faith Baptist Church. And you can see Reverend Sally Bingham, founder of IPL, as well as Susan Stevenson, executive director, as well as Ambrose Carroll from Green the Church here, really demonstrating that the community comes out for these ribbon cutting events and shows how important it is that these congregations are making the decision to go solar. Next slide. So this is actually a system that we just completed just a few weeks ago, and just had our ribbon cutting. And this is the Sandy Spring Meeting House in Montgomery County, Maryland. This is a Quaker meeting house. And I thought it was important to share perspective from the folks at the Quaker House. They said this arrangement with RE-volv, installing solar panels at no cost to our meeting, allows our congregation to both use green energy and to continue funding the causes we believe in, such as social justice, poverty elimination, justice reform, and peace efforts. We're excited to save money on our energy usage, but most of all, we want to use renewable energy to help our planet recover from the harm we all have caused. And this this project is going to save Sandy Spring over $150,000 over the life of the system. Next slide. And this is the ribbon cutting, where, of course, the children came out. This was just taken a couple weeks ago. Summer weather is here, and popsicles are there, and the solar panels are on the roof. Next slide. This is a project that we just signed up. It's our first Zen Center. This is the Zen Center of Denver in Denver, Colorado. And this organization with a 10 kilowatt system is going to save $80,000 on their electricity bills. Next slide. This was one of our earlier projects in Piedmont, California. This is the Kahila Community Synagogue, an incredible justice-oriented synagogue that's going to save $72,000 on their electricity bills, thanks to a 22 kilowatt solar system on their roof. Next slide. This is a project that came to us through the New Mexico IPL chapter. This is St. Thomas of Canterbury Episcopal Church in Albuquerque. And they also had a beautiful quote I wanted to share. They said, "The belief that we are called by God to be faithful stewards of the creation with which he has entrusted us. We have responded to that call in part by taking steps to reduce our own energy consumption, including the decision for a solar installation that will not only minimize our reliance on fossil fuels and cut greenhouse gas emissions, but will also serve as a visible witness to the surrounding community of our commitment to sustainability." And that, to me, is such an important point. I think that they call out in this quote is that it's not just about your congregation and saving money and your building. It's serving as a visible witness. It's demonstrating, it's leading through example, leading the moral question of our time by showing that this is something that we as people of faith are committed to. Next slide. And this system for St. Thomas is going to save them $80,000 on their electricity bills. Beautiful system there in Albuquerque. Next slide. And of course, Bill McKibben, the one and only climate author and leader. We were very happy a few years ago. He tweeted this out after one of our installations. Solar power where we need it most. Congrats to True Fellowship Baptist Church in Richmond, home of the Chevron oil refinery. This new solar system is going to save the church on their electricity bills and on CO2 emissions. So again, we really want to highlight the storytelling aspect of these projects. It's not just about solar on the roof. It's how can we use this to raise awareness about clean energy and the just transition in our communities and much broader. Next slide. So these are the next steps to getting started for those of you that are interested. The first is, as I mentioned, we would need to collect 12 months of electricity bills from your congregation. You can submit those directly on our website at revolve.org/utility bills. And on that webpage, there's actually a few different ways to upload the electricity bills that you can read about. And of course, we can help you with that if you have any challenges there. Another important step is to find out about the condition of your roof if you don't yet already. Obviously, the newer roofs are better, but we can certainly work with you no matter what stage your roof is in. The next step is also going to be talking with the decision makers about going solar. You might think that this is a no-brainer, but sometimes there might be people within the congregation that need that background information, that need the context. And so again, that's something that we can help you with. Our solar account manager at RE-volv is Marques Mason, and this is his email address, marques@revolve.org. So please feel free to send all your questions and any of this information here directly to Marques, and he and the rest of the team here can help. Next slide. And we're super excited to talk with you all. Thanks again for having us. Here's our website, revolve.org, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andreas. Much appreciate that. A lot of information. There's so many questions coming in, and I just want to tell everyone that we're going to provide all of the links that have been shared today in a follow-up email. Andreas, can we share Marques's email as well?
Absolutely. Please do. Thank you.
Great. So if you don't get your questions answered today, you can email Marques for questions about RE-volv. And now I'm going to turn it over to Hope United Methodist Church. We're going to start first. Ashiki was sharing the video that RE-volv made for Hope United Methodist Church, and then we'll turn it over to Pastor Current. Go ahead with the video, Ashiki.
Okay, one moment here.
We're in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, but work still goes on, and we're looking forward. The name of our church is Hope, and we're looking forward and moving forward even in the installation of this project. From my perspective, this effort to just use the power of the sun is defending God's creation. We're leading our whole community into the use of alternative fuels.
Thank you for sharing that video about Hope. Pastor Current, would you like to take it from here?
Wow, that was quite a video. And I was reminded that this takeoff began in the middle of COVID. We were wearing masks, and even the workers were wearing masks. But it speaks to who we are as a people. These people here in South San Francisco called Hope. Let me try to share a few things with you that might be helpful for those churches or synagogues or places of worship that are considering moving to the solar age. We moved in this direction because we are people of hope and we're looking forward. But even as I saw the mask and whatnot and realized when it occurred, we actually did. I had to remember that, like all community organizations, we had talked about this thing for about 5 years. Okay, it just didn't happen overnight. And we had talked and talked, and our leaders and trustees had talked about it, and we didn't know how to do it. We felt that, perhaps we should do this because we know that we are creation people. We believe that our belief is that God created this world that we're in, and that we are part of this creation, and that we are called to defend God's creation. So from that place, as we wrestled with this and wrestled with each other, we came into contact with Interfaith Power and Light and their local representatives. One who's no longer on staff there, Leora Milgram Gartner, was really the key that moved us forward. We had several conversations one-on-one, but one night during a trustee meeting, she appeared on our Zoom call on our TV or monitor in our boardroom. And from that time, we had a vote right there after she left. People were more amazed at seeing someone talk to them with knowledge about solar on their Zoom call. They voted, yes, let's go with it. And from there, we started to build partners. We partnered with Interfaith Power and Light and continue to partner with them. Susan Stevenson and Gregory Stevens here have been very helpful to us as we not only put a solar panel in place. Matter of fact, I'm talking to you right now because of light that's provided by our solar panels. The power in my computer is powered by the solar panels. It's an invisible part of our lives right now, and we're glad that we made that decision. Yes, there were those that were concerned about money, and through our partnership with Interfaith Power and Light, they reached out to Andreas and RE-volv and all the things. I get calls all the time from different folks. They're saying, what about these RE-volv people? Are they able to do what they're saying? Yes. It became a seamless process that once we decided that, yes, we're going to move in this direction, through the partnership, one day the panels appeared. And we've benefited from that ever since. But and as Andreas says, it just didn't stop there. We realized and are still realizing that it does have a seeding effect. Our primary concern here at our church is serving our community. That's kind of a Methodist thing, but perhaps your churches are also, or community organization is also attempting to do that. We knew that just to be a witness in moving forward and moving away from fossil fuels would have an effect on our community, and it has. Matter of fact, just a block away from us, I saw this morning on the way in, we've got a new neighbor, and he's an installer of solar panels as he redoes his own roof. I can just look out the window and see how many panels have gone up since we installed the first one for our community. We are a community in suburban, I guess this is still suburban San Francisco, but we're a community that is very diverse, ethnically, economically, and we're stuck right in the middle of a housing subdivision. So serving our community is really one-on-one, face-to-face, as we look out our facilities. I share that with you because we didn't stop with just providing panels for ourselves. Through another partnership with the county of San Mateo, where we reside, we received a grant, also with the help of Interfaith Power and Light. We've received a grant for a battery system, a battery storage system. And we said, well, what can we do with this? Well, it turns out that we can do a lot because I don't know if you've heard, I know you're from different places in the country, but California has been suffering from forest fires, now floods because of all the water and snow that we've received this year. But many parts of our state have been devastated because of environmental impacts. And we're concerned about what's going to happen in the future. Well, anyway, some of those impacts affect our electric grid. And oftentimes, especially we have brownouts and especially during fire season, our grid goes down and our whole community is without power. So as we started to have conversations along with Interfaith Power and Light and with other partners, we said, hey, you know, we've got solar power. We don't need the grid all the time. And now we can get a battery so we can store power. And now let's see if we can help our community become more resilient to the environmental impact that's on the way. And well, that's actually here now. So we've opened up what we're calling a resilience center, a place that people can come. And as we started to struggle with, well, what can we provide? Well, we could provide in the middle of a disaster, we can provide coffee, tea, and love. We do that pretty well. But now we can also provide power. We can also ensure that people have phones that are charged and computers that are charged. We can provide refrigeration for those that need to keep their medications cool. We can, we can do all kinds of things. But really, it starts with the fact that we wanted to open up our facility for our community and use the technology that is available to us. The County of San Mateo provided a grant to the team with Interfaith Power and Light being they took off most of the administration and things of that sort. So that was great. Didn't even have to worry about that. But we're still struggling with how do we serve people using these technologies. That's our story. And perhaps you have some questions for us. But we're here. And I hope that you will open up your facility and use the technologies that are available to you. The partners are great, and they take a lot of burden. The things that we don't really, perhaps don't know how to do, the engineering of the system, the maintenance of the system, the ongoing oversight of the system. They take that weight off of the back of the churches and the nonprofits, and they're great partners. That's all I wanted to share with you today. Peace and love to you.
Peace and love to you too, Pastor Current. That was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that information about resiliency hubs, because that's a really important thing that a faith community can do for the community around them to provide that safe space during power outages and wildfires and all kinds of places. So thank you very much for that. We have so many questions. I just want to start by saying that those of you who have asked questions about exactly how the direct pay will get into your pocket as a congregation, I want to tell you that we have a webinar coming up on July 18th, where that would be the best place to ask all of your tax questions. And I'll be sending a link in the follow-up email so you can sign up for that webinar. It's with the U.S. Department of Energy to learn more about direct pay tax credits and the role faith communities can play in helping our country address the climate crisis and ensure all communities are supported. So I will definitely be sending you the link to that. And that's a great place to ask all of your tax questions. And those of you who have questions for RE-volv, I'm going to send you Marcus's email so you can ask him directly. And before we have to sign off here at the hour, I just want to ask a couple of the questions here that people have submitted. Let's see. This is for you, Andreas. What states does RE-volv work in? How do you decide states to work in?
Thanks for that. And yeah, I saw a lot of the questions there. So far we've installed solar in 17 states that are on our homepage. You can see where we've installed all our projects. But actually our new loan product will allow us to work in all 50 states. So if we haven't yet worked in your state, I've seen some come in asking about Florida and Kansas and other places. If we haven't yet worked in your state, reach out to us and we will work with you to explore how we can help you go solar, whether that's with a loan or a lease or a PPA. But our goal is to be able to work with nonprofits and congregations in all 50 states.
That's awesome. Thank you. And can you just describe how RE-volv operates as a nonprofit in terms of ownership and operation of the solar equipment? I think people are still a little confused about that.
Yeah. So with the lease and the PPA, RE-volv as a nonprofit organization owns the equipment, and we're either leasing it to the congregation or we are selling the power right through a power purchase agreement. And that way, all of the onus of maintaining the system is on RE-volv and not on the congregation. So during that 20-year period, RE-volv covers all the operations and maintenance, and it really behooves us to make sure that system is performing optimally. And then, as I mentioned, at the end of that 20-year term, we essentially donate the system back to the nonprofit. So they got their solar system for zero down. They're saving money throughout that 20-year period, and at the end, they get to keep it for free. So it's basically a sort of lease to own model, if you want to think of it in that way.
How long does the system last? Does it last beyond 20 years?
It does, actually. The panels themselves are typically warranted by the manufacturer for 25 years. So even if something were to happen in year 25, you could go back to the manufacturer and get them replaced. But if you think about that, if you think about an electronics company that's warranting a panel for 25 years, that the life of that panel is much longer than that. Usually it's 30 plus years. We really don't know, because the first set of solar systems that went up in the 70s are all still up and running. So the systems do slightly degrade over time. So in 30 years, your system will be producing maybe 80% of what it's currently producing. But those systems are built to last. They're originally built for outer space, so they're very durable.
That's awesome. I have a question for Pastor Current now. What can you say to your people in your church to convince them to go solar in maybe less than 5 years?
Global warming is real. The reality is before us all, whether we want to accept it or not. And we need to do what we can do as individuals and as organizations. We need to respond, and we need to respond now. I've been driving an electric car for, I think, 6 years now. The solar panels, you're paying for power anyway. Why not get clean power? I wish I had a key, and I think anyone who finds the key to unlock people's hearts, and I think it's a heart choice as to how to best invest their resources and also make decisions about how they're affecting the environment. I think it's really a heart choice. Make that choice, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to have to end all of the question answering now because it's almost at the hour. And I just want to make a final plug here for Interfaith Power and Light. We have resources to help your congregations reduce your energy use at our Cool Congregations website. I'll be sending you the link for that. We have a startup guide to get you going. We have a calculator to measure your carbon footprint. And we've got a certification for those of you whose congregations have reduced their carbon emissions by 10% or more. You're eligible for certification. It's a way to encourage your green team to keep doing more, like maybe go on solar. So I'll be putting the link to that in your follow-up email as well. And also, I just want to make sure that you listen to Pastor Current's advice and contact your state IPL affiliate and see if they can also offer you resources to help you go solar. And I'll be sending the link to the map where you can find your state affiliate. And a reminder, recording plus all these links and the slides will be coming to you. Give us a few days to get the recording up on YouTube, but we'll send it out to you. And also thank you to all of our attendees for joining us, and thank you to our panelists. Please, participants, take a moment to drop your thanks in the chat before you go. And thanks also to our partners, United Women in Faith, United Church of Christ, and Creation Justice Ministries. So thank you all. Thank you very much. And look for an email from IPL. Take care.